All right, hello everyone. Welcome to my channel. I'm Thomas and I do educational videos on many subjects. But for the last few months, we've been concentrating on exposing the reciprocal system of theory, a theory of everything proposed by Dewey B. Larson back in the 20th century. He had his first inklings uh, back around 1930, spent about 20 years developing his fundamental postulates through induction, and then through deduction, kept going and put out dozen or 15 books and 50 or so articles on the reciprocal system. The basis of the system, the first and really almost only main, there are really two fundamental postulates, but the main one is that the universe, this is not verbatim, this is just my take on it, but the universe is not made out of matter, it's not made out of energy, but it is made out of motion. Motion is the relationship between time and space. Time and space are reciprocals of each other, basically meaning that they are numerator and denominator of a fraction. And then when you invert, you then have the reciprocal. The reciprocal of 2/3 is 3/2. And the thing about reciprocals is that they have the same qualities, 2 and 3 in this case. But in the case of space and time, space we know to be three-dimensional or maybe more. And therefore time is also three-dimensional or maybe more. And then time we know to be progressing. It's always getting later and later. That's really the scalar progression or flow of time. And so too, space is also flowing, progressing in a scalar manner, in the same way that the Hubble telescope observed all of the distant galaxies moving away from us and moving away from each other. Further away they are, the faster away they are moving. The other thing about space and time is that they are both quantized. They both only come in discrete units. You can't have half a unit of space or half a unit of time or 1/5 of a unit of time. You either have one whole unit or you don't have any. 1 unit of space in 1 unit of time is the speed of light. And the speed of light is not the maximum speed of the universe, but it is the midpoint of the universe, or the null point, or the neutral point, or really the origin. Now, that means that half of the universe is actually moving faster than the speed of light, and then there's a half that's moving slower than the speed of light. That half we are familiar with. We call it, Larson calls it the material sector, or sector 1. And that is the realm of atoms and molecules. And atoms, cling on to each other, bond to each other, and they progress up into their most complex form, which is the DNA molecule. At the point of the DNA molecule, it becomes eligible to come in contact or be exposed to or be controlled by a particle from sector 2, which is the sector that is moving faster than the speed of light. Larson either calls it sector 2 or the cosmic sector. This is the faster than the speed of light. And when those two come together, a sector 1 and a sector 2, they create what Larson calls the life unit. Life is a combination of a material and cosmic unit. The material unit is much, much bigger in comparison or in analogy than the cosmic sector unit, which is because of this thing called the interregional ratio, which if you want to watch any of my videos on Larson's outline of the deductive development of the reciprocal system, he kind of explains that. Those are videos number 8 through 22 in this series. So if you want to go back and look at that, you can kind of see Larson's step-by-step development of the theory. And so the life unit then evolves or develops from its most primitive form, the one-celled organism, all the way up to its most complicated level, which Larson says is the intelligent human being. And at that point, the intelligent human being becomes eligible to be controlled overall by a sector 3 unit. Now, sector 3 is really what I think is really the origin or the speed of light. The sector 3 is independent of space-time or beyond space and time. It's kind of where space and time merge into one. 1 over 1 is the speed of light. It's just 1. So it is beyond space and time, which is the name of Larson's final book, Beyond Space and Time. And that's what we're looking at today. This is his attempt to move into metaphysics. His first books were all on chemistry, astronomy, physics, astrophysics, and a couple on economics. But this is moving into philosophy, religion, and psychology, a little bit of biology, and this came out actually after he died. He died in 1990. This came out about 5 years later. Many of his adherents were almost embarrassed by the book because they didn't feel like Larson would have published this, that they were just his private musings on the topic, nothing that he would want to be published. But it was published, and it seems like it's of a whole. We are about to finish chapter 21 on this book called The Personal Aspect of Ethics. Now, sector 3 communicates with the life unit in various ways, like intuition or revelation, religious revelation or scientific insight. And they, the kind of the governing motives of sector 2, the life, part of the life unit is survival, but sector 3 is motivated by ethical behavior or good behavior. Other people, instead of using sector 3, may call that God or the religious or the spiritual. And those communications with sector 3 that give us good, insights into good behavior, those then sometimes conflict with survival. And so at that point, the human has to decide through free will which they're going to follow, the good behavior or the animal behavior or survival behavior. And so he talks about that for a little while. So we're just going to read the last chapter of his personal aspect of ethics and then get into the next chapter, which is on humanism. Like the conclusions reached in the earlier pages, this identification is a scientific product based in the first instance on established facts and derived from those facts by a series of logical processes. The primary moral objective, the moral code, and all of its aspects of the application of that code, those are all sector 3. Sector 3 is a morality, and kind of like all of the sector 3 communications that we get all put together constitute this moral code. So the primary moral objective, the moral code, and all of the aspects of the application of that code that have been developed in this series of 5 chapters are integral to the parts of the far-reaching system of scientific theory that now ties the physical and the metaphysical aspects of existence together into one great whole. Okay, now we're going to humanism. Identification of the moral objective as the development of the ethical aspect of human personalities and of the individual's primary responsibility as the maximization of his contribution toward that end carries with it the corollary that there is also an obligation to encourage and promote the ethical development of others. This can be accomplished in part by personal influence and example. But the achievement of maximum results also requires the utilization of those agencies that are available to society in general. At present, there are no agencies aimed specifically at this objective, but there are many that contribute in some degree toward progress in this direction. One of the essential tasks of these agencies and the associated educational institutions is to clarify the application of the moral code to the complex situations of modern life, which are beyond the scope of the simple ethical intuitions of the ordinary individual, and to disseminate this information. This is a function of philosophy and, at least potentially, of science. Another essential is to promote compliance with the code. This is a function of religion. Because of the metaphysical origin of the code, the impact of science, which denies metaphysical existence, has heretofore been negative. The purely mechanistic view of life that has dominated scientific thinking not only fails to produce any positive reasons for moral conduct, but lends strong support to those who regard morality as an unnecessary restriction on human behavior. Many individual scientists disagree with this view, but they do so on religious or philosophical grounds, not on scientific grounds. Philosophy, which is ambivalent toward metaphysics, is likewise uncertain about the true status of the moral code. Only religion, which is definitely metaphysical, has hitherto stood foursquare for morality. Thus, the attitude of these three divisions of human knowledge toward recognition of and compliance with the moral code has been specifically correlated with their respective attitudes toward metaphysical existence. This emphasizes the significance of the findings of this present work with respect to such existence and its relation to human life. In the preceding pages, we have applied inductive processes, chiefly extrapolation and analogy, to a consideration of the possibility of existence outside of the physical universe, the universe of space and time. And we have arrived at conclusions as to the reality of that existence and as to some of its characteristics. These conclusions have then been verified by the standard scientific procedure of developing their consequences in many different areas and subjecting these consequences to the test of comparison with the facts of observation. The reality of metaphysical existence is now scientific knowledge. That is, such existence is physically certain. This scientifically confirmed finding is in agreement with the preponderance of human belief in all parts of the known world and throughout recorded history. But it has heretofore been unacceptable to science because of the lack of the kind of confirmation that this present work has now supplied. And a number of schools of philosophy have been sufficiently influenced by the negative attitude of the scientific community to base their philosophical beliefs on the assumption that the space-time universe is the whole of existence. Collectively, such philosophical systems are known as humanism. Inasmuch as the central theme of humanism is a negation of the metaphysical existence that we have now established as certain, rejection of the supernatural worldview, says the editor of The Humanist, is the first humanist principle, it will be appropriate to begin our survey of the agencies of society that deal with morality by examining the humanist position in the light of our new findings. The proponents of humanism have thus far devoted their attention primarily to attacking organized religion, and their basic theme has been the assertion that religion is indifferent, or at least not sufficiently sensitive, to the human condition. The transcendental religions have been criticized especially for their policy of emphasizing preparation for the other world at the expense of what could be done toward improving existence in this world. Julian Huxley, for example, contrasts this traditional religious outlook with that of humanism. And he says, humanism also differs from all supernaturalist religions in centering its long-term aims not on the next world, but on this. One of its fundamental tenets is that this world and life in it can be improved, and that it is our duty to try to improve it socially, culturally, and politically. This humanistic viewpoint this is back to Larson, this humanistic viewpoint has a strong appeal to many thoughtful individuals, and as a result, it has been gaining ground quite rapidly in recent years. Not by any noticeable increase in the number of those who, like Huxley, accept humanism as a substitute for religion, but by an increasingly humanistic attitude on the part of many of the religious organizations that are ostensibly committed to the otherworldly view that the humanists criticize. This substantial degree of success has brought humanism to a, quote, situation of challenge and crisis, because in their absorption with the attack on their adversaries, the humanists have not developed any clear and consistent positive position of their own. It's one thing to reject orthodoxy, dogma, and creed as superstitious mythology irrelevant to the contemporary world. However, it is quite another thing to suggest in positive terms what humanism can offer in their place, says, again, the author of The Humanist, or the editor of The Humanist. The facts that have been developed in the preceding pages now give us a basis from which we can appraise the humanist prospects for success in formulating such a positive program. Insofar as the humanistic goal may be to discredit religion in its entirety, our findings show that it is doomed to failure, as we have definitely confirmed the essential elements of religious belief. Our results do support the humanist contention that much of the detailed structure of religious doctrine is superstitious mythology, and we can endorse their efforts to the extent that they are directed at purging religion of these encumbrances. But whatever success they may have in this undertaking will not shake the foundations of religion. On the contrary, it will merely bring the weakness of the humanist's own position more clearly into focus. Again, quoting the same author, the humanist does not exclude a transcendental reality on a priori grounds. He does not callously dismiss the reports of mystical or revelatory experiences, but he looks upon these reports as events to be explained and interpreted in natural terms. And he contends that there is no adequate evidence of metaphysical existence. Larson's saying, in other words, he asks that religious faith be replaced by faith in the tenets of humanism. Of course, the findings of the present work completely demolish this position, but even without the new knowledge, the humanist has no support for it other than his belief that a physical explanation will someday be found for the seemingly non-physical aspects of human existence. This tenuous hope is all that he has to offer as a substitute for the religious explanation that he contends is not adequately supported. There is considerable diversity in the humanistic outlook, as in most philosophical positions, but the central proposition by which it is distinguished is the rejection of the metaphysical. He says, parenthetically, the term supernatural is generally used in humanist discourse, but in the light of our findings, metaphysical existence is another manifestation of nature. It is not supernatural. It follows on this basis that all knowledge of the world, including knowledge of human life, must be derived from experience. This is the conventional scientific or empiricist view. And in general terms, it can be said that humanism is a philosophical application of conventional scientific thought. The work of Freud, which extended the scope of science into areas that had been previously the undisputed provinces of philosophy and religion, was quite influential in the spread of humanism. Freud saw religion as a historical development, the heritage of many generations. This stock of religious ideas is generally offered as a divine revelation. But that is in itself a part of the religious system and entirely leaves out of account the known historical development of these ideas and their variation in various ages and cultures. That was all Freud. What Freud himself failed to take into account is that the gradual development of religious ideas over a long period of history has no implications as to the means by which those advances were made. A cumulative series of revelations and other intuitive events leading ultimately to the doctrines of one of the modern religions is just as logical a development as the cumulative series of flashes of insight that culminated in one of the modern physical theories. All right, we'll stop there. We'll take over tomorrow. Thanks for tuning in.